The envelope was taped to the inside of the closet door, not tucked behind a panel, not slid under the carpet seam, taped right there, visible the moment Donna pushed the door open with her cart handle and the hinges gave. A manila envelope, thick as a small paperback with no name on it and no markings she could make out. Just that flat yellow face staring back at her under the fluorescent hum of Suite 1408. She stood there a moment. Her cart handle was still warm in her palm. She had 4 rooms left on her floor rotation, and her knees had been telling her since the 3rd floor that she was 2 years past due on a cortisone shot she could not afford. The suite was supposed to be empty, and it had been empty for 11 days, according to the sheet on her clipboard. Vacated in a hurry, housekeeping had been told, a long-term guest who checked out 2 Sundays ago and left no forwarding word. Donna set the brake on her cart and went to the envelope. She pressed it once with 2 fingers. There was something solid inside, bundled and thick. She set it on the desk by the window and went back to do what she had come to do, working steadily from the bathroom to the bedroom to the sitting area, stripping the bed linen even though the bed had not been slept in, wiping down the surfaces, checking under the desk and behind the headboard the way she always did. She did not open the envelope while she cleaned. She was not sure why. Maybe it was habit, the same reflex that made her set aside phones and earrings and wedding bands in a labelled baggie for lost and found, never palming them, never sliding anything into her apron. 22 years, not once. She had learned that from her mother, who had cleaned offices in this same city for 31 years before her knees gave out entirely, who had told her that honesty was not a strategy, but a posture, the way you held yourself when nobody was watching. Her mother had been gone 4 years now. Donna carried the envelope down to the front desk in a labelled baggie, wrote it up on the lost and found form the way she wrote up everything, and clocked out at 7:45 in the evening. She took the number 14 bus home to the apartment on Carver Street that she shared with her son Marcus, who was 17 and working weekends at the sub shop on 9th, and her daughter Aisha, who was 11 and could already read faster than anyone Donna had ever met. She did not think about the envelope on the bus ride home. She thought about it in the early morning hours, though, somewhere between 2 and 3, when she woke the way she had woken for the past several months, her chest full of arithmetic she could not make come out right. The rent on Carver Street was going up in January, and the landlord had given them 60 days written notice, which meant 60 days to find another way or another place. Marcus's tuition for the vocational program had a spring instalment due. Aisha needed glasses, had needed them for 3 months actually, and was squinting at the board in the second row and saying nothing about it because Donna had mentioned only once that money was thin right now, and Aisha had filed it somewhere and stopped asking for things. That was the part that hurt the most, not her own doing without. Aisha learning to want less. She lay in the dark and ran the numbers the way she always did, looking for a seam in them, and the numbers held firm the way they always did. The second job she had picked up, cleaning offices 2 evenings a week for a contractor on the south side, helped, but not enough to move the arithmetic to a different column. She'd worked out that if she picked up 1 more weekend shift at the hotel and held the office work through March, she might cover the rent increase and the glasses and keep the spring instalment from going to collections. Might. She knew the apartment on Carver Street by sound in the dark the same way she knew her own hands, the creak third from the top of the short staircase, the way the kitchen faucet needed 2 turns and a half to close without dripping, the gap under Marcus's door that let the hall light through in a thin gold line she had learned to step around on her way to the bathroom so as not to wake him before his alarm. She had lived in this apartment for 9 years, which was longer than she had lived anywhere in her adult life. The thought of uprooting Marcus and Aisha and carrying their few pieces of furniture down those stairs and into a truck she would have to rent and drive herself sat in her chest like something she had not yet found a name for. Not panic, not quite grief. Something between the two, with a flat, practical edge to it. She had done harder things. She had raised 2 children by herself in a city that did not make that easy. Had buried her mother without taking more than 2 days from work because she could not afford 3, had eaten the same 4 meals in rotation for a year and a half when Marcus was small and the daycare on 8th was taking half of what she made and the bus pass was taking another significant portion and the month felt longer than the check every single time. She had done all of that without losing the thread of herself. She could do this too. She did not include anything for herself in these calculations. There was nothing to include. She got up at 4:30 the way she always did and was on the bus by 5:20 and was at the hotel by 6 and had her cart loaded and her floor rotation underway by 6:15. She moved through the morning floors the same as every other morning, the same rhythm, the same sequence, her hands doing what they always did. She did not ask about the envelope. She had turned it in. It was logged. Whatever happened next was not her business. She found out anyway on her lunch break when one of the front desk clerks, a young woman named Priya, who had always been warm to Donna in the way some people are simply warm without it costing them anything, told her the envelope had been opened and counted. Priya said it in a low voice, leaning slightly across the counter as though the information were delicate, which in a certain sense it was. She had that quality some people have of treating information they are sharing as important precisely because it is going to the right person. She looked at Donna the way people look when they want to see the effect of something. $200,000 in banded cash. Donna sat with her lunch, a peanut butter sandwich she had made at 4 a.m, cut in half, wrapped in wax paper, and held the number in her mind for a while. $200,000. She had never been in the same room with a number like that in any form. Not in currency, not on a balance sheet, not in any version of her life or her mother's life before hers. The number sat in her mind like an object from another world, too large to be useful, too large to be real. Nobody's claimed it yet, Priya said. Management called the guest. His line's disconnected. They're going to hold it for 60 days and then it goes through a process. What process? Donna said. Priya shrugged. Legal, I think. Something with the city. I don't really know. Donna finished her sandwich. She went back to her floor. If you have ever watched someone do an honest thing when every circumstance around them argued for a different choice, you know it is not dramatic. It does not announce itself. It looks from the outside like someone continuing to go to work. And that is exactly what Donna did. There are people who wonder later what they would have done. Whether they would have walked that envelope to the front desk, or whether they would have stood in the doorway of suite 1408 a little longer, doing a different kind of arithmetic. Donna did not wonder about it. The question never reached her because the answer was already built in. The same way your hand knows to close when something falls toward it before your mind has given the instruction. 22 years. Her mother's voice. Honesty is not a strategy. She just did not know that someone else was watching it happen. The guest who had vacated suite 1408 11 days earlier was a man named Leonard Holt. He was 54 years old. He had built a commercial real estate company over 27 years, beginning with a single renovation loan on a failing strip mall outside the city and compounding it, deal by deal, into a portfolio that now held 11 properties in 4 states. He had 3 employees who called him Len and 12 who called him Mr. Holt and a lawyer who called him at inconvenient hours and a daughter who called him twice a week from a campus in Oregon and called him Dad. He had checked out of suite 1408 on a Sunday evening in considerable distress because that Thursday his personal accountant of 19 years had sent him an email, then turned off his phone, then apparently boarded a flight to somewhere that did not have an extradition treaty with anyone. The accountant's name was beside the point. What he had taken with him, besides the contents of 2 client escrow accounts, was the detailed knowledge of where Leonard's liquid reserves had been moved. What he had left behind, besides a voicemail that Leonard had listened to 17 times, was a carefully constructed mess. Leonard had driven to the hotel on Friday evening in a state close to panic, which was not a state he was familiar with, and had gone to the suite he kept on a long-term corporate rate, which he used when deals ran late and he did not want to drive back out to the house, and he had sat at the desk with a bottle of water and tried to think. He had gone to the safe in the closet where he kept an emergency reserve he had stopped thinking of as an emergency reserve over the years, $200,000 in banded 50s and 100s that he had accumulated during a different era when he trusted institutional accounts, less than he trusted a safe he could see. He had taken the money out and held it and put it on the desk and then put it back and then taken it out again. He had still been sitting with it, trying to figure out which lawyer to call first when his daughter had phoned at 9 o'clock from Oregon, and he had talked to her for 40 minutes, and by the end of the conversation, something in him had settled enough to sleep. He had left the money on the desk. He had meant to go back for it Sunday morning, and instead he had gotten a call from one of his property managers and driven straight to a meeting and checked out over the phone, and given no thought to the suite until Tuesday when it hit him. He drove to the hotel Tuesday evening. The front desk told him that a cleaning staff member had found a sealed envelope on her rounds 9 days ago and turned it into lost and found, fully intact, and that it had been logged and held in the manager's safe pending his retrieval. He stood at the desk for a moment and did not say anything. The amount was exactly as he had left it. He asked who had found it. The front desk manager, a quiet man named Carlos, told him what was on the lost and found log: the room number, the date, the time, the employee's name. He told Leonard that according to the log, the employee had turned it in at the end of her shift the same day she found it. He said he could not disclose further personnel information, but that the log was a matter of hotel record, and Leonard was welcome to review it. Leonard looked at the log for a long time. He said, "She found $200,000 in an empty hotel room and turned it in." Carlos said that was what the log showed. Leonard said, "I want to meet her." That was a Thursday. Carlos told him Donna worked Mondays through Fridays, early morning shift, and that he could arrange an introduction the following Monday if Leonard could come in. Leonard said he could come in. He thanked Carlos and went to the parking garage and sat in his car for a few minutes. He had been in business for 27 years. He had employed hundreds of people over that span. He had, in the past 11 days, been betrayed in a significant and documented way by a man he had paid generously and trusted completely. A man who had sat across his desk and shaken his hand and taken a bonus check at Christmas for 19 consecutive years. He was not a naive man. He had believed himself past the point of surprise when it came to what people did with access to other people's money. He sat in his car in the parking garage and did not turn the ignition. The log had said 7:44 in the evening. Donna Price, housekeeping, floor rotation 14, found and logged one sealed manila envelope in suite 1408. He had looked at the handwriting on the log entry, which was small and careful and slanted slightly to the left, the handwriting of someone who had filled out a lot of forms, and he had felt something he could not immediately name. What he knew about the person who had filled out that form was exactly this. She had found $200,000 in an empty hotel room in a sealed envelope that bore no name, and she had not opened it. She had carried it to the lost and found desk and logged it before the end of her shift. She had not called a lawyer to ask what the law said about abandoned currency. She had not called a friend to ask for advice. She had not apparently done anything except fill out the form and go home. He had spent 11 days inside the wreckage of what misplaced trust looked like. He knew exactly what it cost. He sat in the parking garage and thought about a woman he had never met, carrying a sealed envelope down a corridor in a hotel she cleaned for a living, and he understood that he was looking at the other side of a ledger he had not known how to read until now. He had been wrong, it turned out, just not in the direction he expected. She had thought the meeting was a disciplinary matter. Donna heard from Carlos on Friday afternoon, a brief word at the end of her shift, that the hotel owner wished to speak with her Monday morning in the manager's office. Carlos was careful and professional, and he told her only what he needed to tell her, and he did not give her anything to go on. She rode the bus home and sat with Marcus at the kitchen table while he finished his homework, and she did not say anything about it until Aisha had gone to bed. And then she mentioned it to Marcus in a level voice, saying there was a meeting Monday, and she was not sure what it was about. Marcus was 17 and had his grandmother's eyes, serious and steady, and he said, "You didn't do anything wrong." She said, "I know I didn't." She went to sleep. She got up at 4:30. Monday came. The manager's office was a room off the main corridor behind the front desk, with a window that looked out onto the service alley and 2 chairs positioned in front of the desk. When Donna arrived at 8 o'clock in her uniform, her name badge straight, her cart already loaded for the day's rotation, Carlos met her at the office door and held it open. There was a man in one of the chairs who stood up when she came in. He was tall, not as tall as Marcus was getting to be, wearing a jacket, but no tie. He had a slight grey at his temples and a way of standing that was neither entitled nor rushed, the way some people stand when they have had something happen to them, and it has changed the way they move through rooms. Carlos introduced them. Leonard Holt, Donna Price. "Ms. Price," Leonard said, and shook her hand. "I owe you a proper thank you, and I've been wanting to give it to you since Thursday." He told her what the money was. He told her, briefly and without drama, about the accountant and the disrupted week and the Sunday he had driven out without thinking to retrieve what he'd left. He told her that he had come back to find $200,000 sitting in the manager's safe, every band in place, and that the log showed she had turned it in within hours of finding it and never asked about it again. Donna listened. She kept her hands still. He did not rush any of it. He told it plainly and in order, the way someone tells a thing when they have already decided not to edit it for the listener's comfort, and she was grateful for that without knowing quite how to say so. She had been told things in this office before, over the years, 2 incidents of note. Once when a guest had complained that she had moved a garment from the floor to a chair, and once when a co-worker had accused her of clocking in early for him without authorization, which was not true but took 2 weeks and a written statement to resolve. Both times she had sat in one of these chairs and looked at the service alley window and said, "Yes, sir," or "Yes, ma'am," and waited for it to be over. This was a different thing. The man across the desk was not managing a complaint. He was accounting for himself, which was something she had seen people do rarely enough that she noticed it when it happened. "I want to know if there's something I can do for you," Leonard said. "I'm not talking about a finder's fee. I understand the hotel has a policy, and I know you didn't do it for a reward. I'm asking because it seems like the right question to ask." She looked at him. She had been looked at by men in expensive jackets before, in lobbies and corridors and service entrances, and the look was usually a particular kind of nothing, a glance that registered the uniform and moved on. This was a different thing. He was actually waiting for an answer. She said, "My daughter needs glasses. She's been needing them for 3 months." She had not planned to say it. She had not planned to say anything. But it was the thing sitting closest to the surface, the small, specific thing that sat under all the arithmetic like a splinter, and it came out in her plain voice with no decoration on it. Leonard nodded once. He said, "What else?" She told him about the rent. She told him about Marcus and the vocational program. She told him briefly and without complaint, the way you would describe a math problem to someone who had asked to see it, not asking for sympathy and not performing dignity, just laying it out so he had the information. She talked for perhaps 3 minutes. When she was done, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I want to be straight with you, Ms. Price. I have a mess on my hands right now with my finances, and I'm not going to pretend I'm not in the middle of it. What I have is a building. I own a commercial property on the east side that has 2 vacant units in it. One of them has a 2-bedroom residential space above the commercial floor, used as a management office for a while, and then sat empty. I'd like to offer it to you rent-free for 1 year while I get myself sorted, and after that year we'd talk about a fair rate." Donna looked at him. He said, "I'd also like to offer your son a paid apprenticeship with one of my property managers, if the vocational work he's doing is anywhere near the field. It's real work, not a favour. I need bodies on the ground in that building." He paused. "And if your daughter needs glasses, I would be glad to help with that this week. That's not a negotiation. That's just the one thing you said first." Donna was quiet for a moment. She looked at the window that faced the service alley, at the light coming through it, and then she looked back at the man in the chair. "Why?" she said. He said, "Because I've been in business for 27 years and I just got reminded that most people would have kept that money." She said, "I know that." He said, "I know you know that. You did it anyway." She said she needed to think. She said she needed to talk to her son, and she would not make a decision in a room without him. Leonard said that was exactly right, and he gave her a card with a direct number, and he said there was no clock on it. She went back to her floor rotation. She had 3 more rooms on the corridor, and she did them the way she always did them, steadily and without rushing. She called Leonard that evening from the kitchen table, with Marcus sitting across from her, and Aisha doing homework in the bedroom. She told him she had talked to her son and that they would like to see the unit. They saw it that Saturday. It was on the 3rd floor of a brick building on Aldine Street, east side, with 2 bedrooms and a kitchen window that faced west and caught the afternoon light the way windows sometimes do when nobody planned for it, just the angle of the building and the gap between structures, so the kitchen in the evening was warm and gold without any effort. Garrett, the property manager, met them at the front door and took them up the 3 flights. He was a quiet man in his mid-40s who spoke when something needed explaining and was otherwise content to let them look. Donna appreciated that. She had been looked at and addressed and explained to enough in recent weeks to last her a while. She wanted, more than anything, to stand in a room and draw her own conclusions. The hallway smelled faintly of old paint and something slightly sweet that she could not identify, a quality of air that very old buildings have, a record of everyone who had lived in them. The front door of the unit was solid and the lock was new. She noticed the lock. She noticed the way the bedroom doors swung cleanly on their hinges, and the window frame sat square in the walls, the small evidence of a building maintained by someone who paid attention. The larger bedroom looked out over the back of the building, which faced east, so the morning would come in early there. The smaller bedroom, which would be Aisha's, had a shelf built into one wall that was exactly the right height for books. Donna looked at the shelf and thought of the stack on Aisha's nightstand and the overflow stacked on the floor against the baseboard. Aisha stood in the kitchen and said it was nice. Marcus looked at the walls and said he could paint it. He had been talking about colour for 3 weeks, she realised, carrying ideas around in the way he carried most things, quietly, without announcing them until he had thought them through. Donna stood at the kitchen window and held the light in her eyes for a moment. They moved in on the 1st of November. The apartment came with a deep closet in the second bedroom and floors that creaked at specific points Donna learned within the first week and began to navigate without thinking, the way you learn the grammar of a place you have decided to live in. Marcus started the apprenticeship in early November as well, working 2 afternoons a week with a property manager named Garrett, who ran 3 of Leonard's buildings and had the patient disposition of someone who liked to teach. Aisha got her glasses on a Wednesday in October, 3 days after the meeting in the manager's office. The ophthalmologist fitted them and she put them on and looked around the exam room and was quiet for a long moment. And then she said, in a voice Donna would remember for a long time, "Oh, just that." One small word for the world becoming readable again. Donna kept her job at the hotel. She had thought about that. She had considered it carefully the weekend after the meeting, lying in the new dark of her old room on Carver Street, turning the question over. She had not worked 22 years to become someone's project. She was not interested in being a story Leonard told at dinners about what happened to him when his accountant ran off. She was not interested in charity dressed up as arrangement. What she had been offered was not that. She had looked at it from more than one angle. The work Marcus was doing was real work, and he was coming home on the apprenticeship evenings with a concentrated look she recognized as the look of someone who has been learning something that fits the shape of their mind. The apartment was real, and the rent-free year was a contract, not a gift, and she had read it with her cousin Tina, who had a paralegal background, and it was a legitimate lease with a legitimate renewal clause at a rate that was below the market on that block. It was a fair thing offered by a man who understood what fair was. She stayed at the hotel. She went to work on Mondays through Fridays, early shift, her cart loaded by 6:15. She thought, sometimes in the quiet of her floor rotation, about the envelope. About the moment in suite 1408 when she had pressed it with 2 fingers and felt the bundled weight. About the arithmetic she had been doing for months in the dark before 4:30, and the fact that the answer she needed had been sitting in a room she was about to clean, taped to the inside of a closet door. She thought about what her mother would have said. Her mother would not have said anything dramatic. Her mother would have set a bowl of something on the table and sat down across from her and looked at her with those steady eyes and let the silence do the thing silence did when it came from someone who loved you and was not afraid of it. Her mother's name was Gloria. She had come to this city at the age of 23 with 1 suitcase and a cousin's address written on the back of a bus ticket, and she had stayed for the rest of her life, 48 years, without ever going back to the town where she was raised. She had cleaned offices and private homes and medical suites and hotel rooms, all of it unremarked by the people who benefited from it, all of it done with the same plain, careful attention. She had raised Donna in a 2-bedroom apartment on the south side, the same one for 17 years, and she had pressed Donna's school uniforms the night before, every single night, because she believed in a person presenting themselves with care, regardless of what resources they had to work with. She believed in it with a quiet fierceness that Donna understood better as an adult than she had as a child. Her mother had cleaned offices for 31 years. She had found things over those years. A wallet in a desk drawer with $400 in it, and the driver's license of a man who Donna's mother had never seen set foot in the building. A phone between 2 cushions. A document folder left in a copy room that turned out to be something significant. She had turned every one of them in, every time in the same way, logging them, labelling them, never speaking of them unless someone asked. Nobody had come back any of those times to ask who found them. Donna had understood, watching her, that this was not the point. The point was not whether anyone came back. The point was the posture you maintained, whether they did or not. The difference between a person who was honest because they might be caught and a person who was honest because that was simply who they were. Her mother had been the second kind. She had raised Donna to be the second kind. What her mother had not prepared her for was the possibility that someone would eventually pay attention. She had raised Donna for a world that might not reward the choice, because that was the world she had moved through. The reward was secondary. The choice was the thing. Donna had carried that the way you carry a truth that was given to you before you were old enough to fully receive it, and had only finished understanding it somewhere in her 30s, in the arithmetic hours of one early morning or another. It was just that Donna had not expected it to change anything. She had prepared herself for a life in which it wouldn't. By the spring, Marcus had picked up a third apprenticeship afternoon, and Garrett had told Leonard that the young man had a natural instinct for property assessment, which was something you could not teach, only recognize. Leonard passed this along to Donna in a brief phone call, matter-of-fact in the way he communicated everything, direct and unexaggerated, the way people are when they have stopped performing for an audience and have nothing left to prove. His own situation had stabilized over those months. The accountant had been found eventually, not by any agency Leonard hired, but by the ordinary grinding work of international financial tracking, and while the legal process would take years, enough had been recovered and enough had been reconstructed to give Leonard solid ground again. He had said nothing about this to Donna, and she had not asked. It was not her concern. What she knew was that the building on Aldine was well maintained, that Garrett answered his phone, and that the lease said what it said. She made it to a year on Aldine Street, renewed at the rate in the lease, which was fair, which was what she had understood it would be. Aisha turned 12 that spring and celebrated with 3 friends from school in the kitchen with the west-facing window, eating cake that Donna had made from a recipe of her mother's. A dense lemon cake with a white glaze that her mother had made for every birthday in the family, going back further than Donna could personally remember. The girls sat at the table and the afternoon light came in the way it did, and Aisha's glasses caught it and threw a small moving shape on the wall, and nobody mentioned it. Aisha's friends stayed until evening. They were loud and comfortable in the way children are in a kitchen that feels like a real home, the kind of comfort that was not simply permission but something in the quality of the air, in the particular warmth of a place where someone had decided to stay. Donna washed dishes while they talked, listening to them without meaning to, catching words and laughter, and the overlapping voices of girls who were at the age where everything was still interesting, and the world was still large in the right direction. Marcus, sitting in the doorway between the kitchen and the living room, eating his slice, watched his sister, and then watched his mother. And Donna caught his eye, and he gave her the small nod that meant he was fine, that the family was fine, that he saw what she had built. She had not built it from the money, she had built it from not taking the money. The distinction mattered to her. It would probably always matter to her. In her second winter on Aldine Street, she bought herself a pair of good wool socks. This sounds like a small thing. And it was not. She had been wearing the same 4 pairs of socks for 2 years, rotating them through the wash on a schedule she no longer had to think about, darning the ones that frayed because she was her mother's daughter, and her mother had taught her to maintain things. She had walked the floors of 12 hotel rooms a day in those socks, on those knees that still talked to her every morning on the stairs, and she had not replaced the socks because there had always been something more pressing. She stood in the aisle of the discount store on Glenwood and picked up a package of good wool socks, the kind with the extra cushioning in the heel, and she put them in her basket without looking at the price. She looked at the price on the way to the register. It was $9.84. She bought them anyway. There was an afternoon in that second winter on Aldine Street when she was coming home from work on the number 14 bus, the same route she had always taken, and the light was going at that late fall angle that made everything in the city look older than it was, the buildings and the awnings and the people at the bus stop. And she sat with her bag in her lap and looked out the window and thought about her mother for no particular reason, the way she did sometimes, without the grief at the front of it. The bus was warm and smelled of the particular combination of people returning home from work in the late afternoon, damp coats and fast food and something faintly chemical from the dry cleaners 3 stops back. 2 older women across the aisle were talking in low voices about a grandchild. A young man with earbuds in was asleep against the window, his head tipped back at the angle sleepers find, without intending to. The bus moved through the late fall city, and Donna sat with her hands in her lap and felt, for the first time in a long while, the particular sensation of not being in the middle of solving anything. The arithmetic had changed its character. It was still present, the way arithmetic always was when you were a working person in a city, but it had changed from the kind that had no good answers into the ordinary kind, the kind other people had too, the kind that was manageable. She thought about suite 1408, about the closet door swinging open on its hinges in the fluorescent quiet, about the moment before she knew what was in the envelope, when it was still just a shape in a room she had come to clean. She had not made a choice in that room, exactly. That was what she had understood since. The choice had already been made, built over 22 years by the accumulated weight of small decisions, each of them unremarkable in isolation, each of them the same. Turn it in. Log it, label it, leave the room the way you found it, minus what wasn't there to begin with. What the room had given back was something different. That was a grace she had not earned in any one moment. It came from the whole length of a life lived in a particular direction. From every morning she had gotten up at 4:30 and gone to work and done it honestly. From everything she had left on a desk in a labelled baggie when no one was watching. It came from her mother's kitchen, from a table where the rule was never stated because the rule was lived. From 31 years of cleaned offices and one daughter who understood, without having been taught in so many words, that there was only one kind of person worth being. The bus went on through the fall light. She got off at her corner and walked the half-block to the door on Aldine Street and climbed the 3 flights, her knees talking to her the way they always did, and she unlocked the door and the kitchen had that particular smell of warmth and something cooking because Aisha had gotten home before her and had put something on the stove, the girl who had learned to want less and was slowly learning to want again. The west window was dark by then, the light gone, but she could see exactly where it would be tomorrow. She set her bag down. She washed her hands at the sink. She stood in the kitchen of the life her honesty had built, and she was still. If you've ever had someone in your life who kept doing the right thing when there was no reason to believe it would ever matter, leave their name in the comments. The world needs to hear it. And if this story stayed with you, there's another one waiting for you on this channel about a woman who gave something up that she could not afford to give and received something back that she did not know she was owed. This story is a work of fiction inspired by true-to-life themes.